Welcome to Podlomania Podcast, your photography and video podcast where we introduce you to some of the most amazing creatives from around the world. I'm your host, Wayne Johns, and I'm here once again with my good friend, buddy, and long-haired co-host, Jake Hicks. Hey, man.
Wayne, you're getting good at those intros, man. Honestly, anybody think they were recorded? First time, off the cuff.
Anybody would think they're so clean, people would think I'm almost reading them off a script.
It's almost,
mate. Almost. Well, here we are, mate. We're at episode 12.
12, I know.
We're breaking in those double numbers.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. I mean, people can't see. We're all on camera, all three of us. But, they don't have the glory of looking at our beautiful faces during this one.
Episode 12, though, man. It's crazy. It's flown by. I haven't been doing it a couple of months, but no, it's been good. A few months, I suppose. But yeah, no, it's been good.
It's been good.
Didn't you give me some numbers earlier on today of how just amazing Podlomania Podcast has been doing in certain regions and in certain very specific niches?
I did, mate. Yeah. Well, we've pulled some stats from all our sort of Apple podcasts and our host Podbean and things like that. And we've got a separate tracking service which we use to see our statistics and things. And I'm quite happy, man. I've got to say, I'm quite happy. I mean, we have a peak position. We're not there at the moment because it changes sort of daily. But I didn't realize until I looked at the stats. But in Apple Podcasts alone, at one point, this was back in February. That's how delayed I was looking at it. We hit peak position of number 2.
Now,
which is absolutely
in
awesome.
Southern Bulgaria, or
yeah, that's it.
Or was it worldwide?
that was worldwide. And the thing is, then it changed, and in our category, our peak position, we actually hit, I think it was 12 or 13. Of course, now I looked at it recently, and we're way down on that again. So
right. I think we've got it there. I think we can move on now.
Yeah. But the good thing is, I mean, looking at our audience base, and we've got to give a big thanks to all the guys, well, everybody, but mainly in the US, because that's our biggest audience base is the US by at least nearly 40% of all our listeners.
Who would have guessed?
So the US is streaming ahead with about 64% of our total listener base. And we go out in over 22 countries. So that's absolutely awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's good. So, yeah, big thanks to everybody for tuning in the early days of Podlomania, It's superb. It's going to get better and better, I hope.
On with episode 12.
Episode 12. Should we dive into it?
Let's do it.
Oh, we got a character today, haven't we? I mean, I'm staring at this guy right now. He's like a big cuddly bear over there, isn't he?
Wow, that intro! Wow.
Well, let's get into it. Let's get him on, introduce him, and our listeners, welcome to episode 12. And in this episode, we talk to a man who's a Canon explorer of light, a talented photographer, director, and filmmaker. He's traveled the globe by 4x4. And man, oh man, does he wear the most amazing glasses that you could probably find in the dark if you had to. We got to welcome Bruce Dorn. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Well,
thanks,
Bruce.
Wayne.
Just to clarify, Wayne writes all those all by himself,
Yeah. He's special.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't put needs on the end of that sentence.
but the day is young. We'll get there.
The day is young.
Yeah, thanks for having me aboard. I'm looking forward to it.
It's a pleasure, Bruce. It's an honor to have you on. A man of your vast years in the industry and experiance.
Go on.
That's complimentary.
Don't stop.
I won't say what Jake was going to say. It's almost insulting.
No, the reason that I mentioned, because I was looking through the questions and I'm like, it's just about everything is based on Bruce's vast experience. I feel like every question should be propositioned with, so Gandalf, what can you tell us about this? It was everything was you've been doing this a long time, which is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I started in the Jurassic period, and back when cameras were steam powered, and somehow managed to keep pushing forward and picking up the technology along the way. But yeah, this year marks 50 years with a camera in my hands, and
wow.
35 years in the Directors Guild of America. So I've been doing it too long.
Well, before we get into a lot of details, Bruce, it's something we always ask every guest as the opening question. And that's for our audience, because our audience is a very diverse listener base in a lot of countries. They may be from the photography or video side. They may be beginners. They may be very experienced or professional. So we like to ask all our guests, like, for our audience, how would you describe yourself and what you do?
Well, an image maker, general practitioner with a camera. I was actually trained in visual communications, more of a design program than a photography program. For the most part, my photography capabilities are self-trained, but started as a still shooter, worked my way into doing motion capture, and actually laid down the still camera for quite a while to direct exclusively, and then picked it up again and back in the saddle.
Nice.
So you mentioned your training that you had. When was that, and what was the course that you did?
Well, I've got a BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts, in Visual Communications, and I would say a bit of graphic design, but a lot of creative problem solving, synectics, free association, all kinds of thinking technologies and training. And then unlike today, when you can Google anything and learn about it, I actually had to go to the library occasionally and work with a few people, get some training there. I'd say the bulk of my photography training has come from inadvertent mentorships. I've worked with some really brilliant cameramen and had the good sense to keep my mouth shut and my ears open. And boy, I learned a lot working with these really great directors of photography.
Okay.
Awesome.
Wow.
Awesome.
It sounds like a pretty interesting course. I haven't heard of anything like that, and I suppose that was generalistic at the time, because you're going back to what, the 80s or 70s?
70s, yeah. So I started at Professional Art School, Heron School of Art in Indianapolis, to get my BFA, and they had sculpture, printmaking, painting, and visual communications. And visual communications was kind of a catch-all for learning to communicate through visual means. And that would lead us into advertising and graphic design. And it was an interesting period. The school was changing over from the classic master and apprentice type of training. And we had some young contemporary thinkers for the early 70s. And as the new faculty came in, they kind of shook up the program. So we came out of there with absolutely no qualifications to make money, but a lot of interesting experiences in problem solving. And that has served me, I think, better than anything else.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, photography, you learn how to capture imagery, but the point more often than not is not how you're saying something, but what you're saying. And so the training that I got in those early days has allowed me to easily transition into filmmaking from stills, for example.
Yeah, problem solving is a timeless skill, whereas opposed to, had you learned how to use a camera and lights 30, 40, 50 years ago, maybe those skills wouldn't have been quite as useful today.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And learning how to teach yourself new stuff, understanding the point of new technologies. I was a mechanic in high school. I mean, I put myself through college, changing spark plugs and doing oil changes on cars. And a lot of those same sort of, I guess you would call them practical skills, served me quite well in the special effects industry. Cause and effect. This is such, that means such, and the being able to sort of just go back to those basic technological understandings allowed me to make a lot of difficult transitions. But yeah, cameras are cameras for the most part, but it still comes down to whether or not you're communicating an interesting idea and you're communicating it articulately.
True. Yeah. And your route, I mean, as you say, you were changing spark plugs, and you were, I think I read somewhere that you were changing your spark plugs and you had a call or a visit or whatever it was to, like your break, as it were. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I was working at the petrol station, as you guys say. We call it gas stations, and dating a lovely girl that worked at the fashion store at the mall, and we were shockingly running out of things to talk about. I was at a magazine stand and picked up a copy of a Conde Nast publication, Mademoiselle. It's a title that's now gone, but we had Vogue, 17, Glamour, and Mademoiselle. And Mademoiselle had a college competition. So I picked up the magazine. It fell open to the page of the competition invitation to enter. I entered it and I won it. And I mean, I literally went from wiping the grease off of my hands 6 months later to getting on an airplane to Manhattan.
Wow.
Went into the offices on Lexington Avenue, and they sent me immediately to Iceland to shoot a sweater collection.
Really?
I was guest editor for a month. It was the guest editorship program went back to the 1930s, and I was the first guy ever to enter it, and I was picked as guest art director. There were 11 beautiful and talented young women that filled out the other posts, and we put out the back to school issue of the magazine, and I got to do a lot of shooting. Shortly
and
after
how old
that,
were you back then? This is straight out of college?
20. I was
20 years old. Wow.
Yeah. And before I turned 21, I was sharing a 4,000 square foot penthouse loft on Fifth Avenue with a glam rock band and shooting for Women's Wear Daily and Bloomingdale's and the various Conde Nast publications.
That's the life at 20, isn't it? Wow.
Okay.
And you've seen me before, Wayne, and you know just how much of a fashion icon I am. So,
oh yes, I could just see
that
you on
time
that runway,
wasn't
Bruce.
wasted. Yeah.
yeah.
And how long were you doing that then? In that, obviously, because that seems like you've made it. Job done.
Yeah, I was in Manhattan from I think it was 73 to 76. While I was shooting fashion, I walked down the street to Time Life headquarters and sort of touched base there. I was more interested in photojournalism, frankly, than fashion. I had zero interest in fashion, to be honest, and ended up connecting with a number of the titles at Time Life. Started shooting for Money Magazine, Business Week. And at that time, they had recently closed Life magazine, and they were trying a smaller format magazine that had the title People magazine. It's not the same People magazine it is today. Thank God. It was the picture editor was a former Life staffer named John Dominus, and then I also worked with who was it? Let me think here for a second. It'll come to me in a second. Oh yeah, Doug Kirkland. Doug Kirkland, who famously shot Marilyn Monroe and pretty much everybody, became the picture editor. I was so low on the totem pole that I don't know if we crossed paths too often, but made contact with those guys. And shortly after that, I abandoned New York just because I didn't really enjoy it at that time, and started moving generally west. But I kept my contacts with the magazines and ended up doing a lot of editorial from the field. Followed the Ku Klux Klan for a year and a half, doing a photo essay on them. Shot Olympic hopefuls for the 1976 Olympics. Lots of really cool stuff. And picked up a teaching position, taught at the university level for about 4 years. I think from 76 to 80, I was a college lecturer and shooting freelance. A lot of freelance photography.
And that's your passion, though. You said, obviously, you enjoy fashion is fine, but it's not strictly your passion compared to the photojournalistic. I mean, you're trying to get more of a real story out of people, as it were. Is that what you're after? Is that what you're chasing?
Well, let's be clear. I picked up the camera to meet attractive women, and as we often do. But yeah, I like the storytelling aspect, and I really enjoyed kind of getting on the other side of the police tape. I like to go where you weren't really supposed to be, and the camera seemed to be a ticket to the other side of the rope. So, kept after that. Advertising, of course, was a pretty obvious opportunity for me, and I started doing a lot of ad work, annual reports, and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. While I was doing that, I made good connections with a number of advertising agencies. They liked my lighting. I've been sort of involved with lighting from the very beginning. That's the one thing that I think has been a great differentiator for me in my career. And once or twice I was asked to function as a lighting consultant on jobs that I was not shooting. Which was a bit of an insult to the DOP that was shooting the job.
Yeah, it happens, man. Yeah,
yeah. The agency people are going to get what they want. So from the wings, I was observing what was going on with the motion picture cameras. I had no intention of getting into it, but another serendipitous opportunity led to that, and made the leap.
Okay.
Wow.
Now I also see you mentioning in questions as to what you're after and that sort of thing. And you say you have a relentless pursuit of beauty. What does that mean to you? Are you trying to get something that somebody else isn't, or do you believe that every image has its own beauty and you're just trying to extract that? Like, what does beauty mean to you in your work? Is it about the light, or is it about the subject? What is it?
It's. Are you familiar with the name of a photographer, Larry Clark? He did a book called Tulsa, a photo essay on heroin users in the heartland. And his pictures, while disturbing, were heartbreakingly beautiful. And I that had a big impact on me seeing his book. It was published by Lustrum Press, I think, back in the 70s. I'm sort of. I feel that you can get people to look if the image is striking and grabs your attention. And there are times when the imagery is disturbing, and it's very odd to make that beautiful, but that's how you get people to look at it. You attract them with the eye candy aspect of it, or the visual attractors, and then you get them to look a little closer and see what you're trying to communicate. So yeah, I don't want to be the type of shooter that I describe as a nature porn shooter, where you go out and shoot nothing but the cheetah posed beautifully on top of the termite mound, ignoring the fact that there is 10,000 safari vehicles all around it. But I do like to use the beauty aspect to make people stop and pay attention. So always looking to make the imagery graphically interesting and beautifully lit and all that. So I guess shorthand for that.
Do you think your images then strive for more of a timeless quality then? I see a lot of your work is not necessarily rooted with elements that put it in a specific era or time, as it were. Is that something that you're consciously doing, or?
I look back, I had a big studio fire at one point in the late 70s and lost all of my work from my early days.
Oh, really?
But I had a handful of silver prints that survived, and I look at them and they stand up. I'm happy with that. I was shooting fashion for the magazines with a Leica M4 and a 50. Really? And it was in the area where you filed out the negative carrier so that you proved that you printed the entirety of the negative, and cropping in camera and getting it right was, it was a fad, I suppose, but it meant something to me, and it led to a very good result when I moved to motion pictures. Cropping in motion picture format is a very expensive process.
Yeah.
When I started shooting film, it was Panavisions and Airflexes, and we didn't have the digital opportunities that we have now. If you didn't get it right, you didn't get it right, it was glaringly obvious. So I think my design background and my design capabilities show through, and if that gives them a little bit of a timeless quality, then great. I love that notion.
Yeah.
Certainly was a student of the masters, paid a lot of attention to Caravaggio and the way that the Dutch masters used light. I noticed that was a common denominator with all the great directors of photography that I got to direct and study with, is how I describe it. I was the director on the set, but I was in awe of some of these guys, and there was never 3-point lighting. It was always light was always attributed to a natural source or inspired by the location. I just never saw the formulated lighting that is so easy to promote and sell via workshops and so on. It just doesn't happen,
So how long was it in your photographic career before you made the transition over to sort of the moving image side? How many years were you shooting sort of stills before you transitioned over?
Yeah, I stayed in the Midwest until 1980, moved out to Phoenix, Arizona that year, and sort of twiddled my thumbs for a while because I was used to doing annual reports and a certain kind of lifestyle photography. In Phoenix, it was more tabletop type of work. Ended up reinventing myself. Reinvention, when you have a 50-year career, reinvention is a constant process. I used to say it was every 5 years. Now I say it's every 5 minutes. But I had an opportunity. I was at my studio. The phone rang. A guy says, "Do you shoot film?" And I said, "Sure." Of course, I'm a photographer. I have to shoot film. Conversation continued. I was distractedly listening to the guy, but I came to understand he was asking me if I shot motion picture stuff, because this guy had lost his cameraman. He's a director, had a cameraman that he'd worked with quite a bit who had killed it, done really well, and moved on to Hollywood. And this guy needed somebody else to fill in. The previous guy had been a still shooter, had transitioned to motion. So he just called a still shooter, just called me out of the blue. He knew my reputation in town as a still shooter. And before the conversation was over, I had agreed to shoot a package of 30-second spots for a healthcare group. He was asking me, how much footage I needed, what lens package I wanted. Did I want the Arri BL or this or that? And I was just making up crap as fast as I could to be agreeable. And I realized I had really stuck my foot in it. I had a sort of implied knowledge that I didn't have, and literally had to run down to the library. And thank God they had an Arri manual in the library. And,
really?
I think it had to have been written by John Fowler, because he was the guy who wrote the book on Arris for so many years.
Wow.
And what I figured out was they didn't have shutter speeds; they had shutter angles. But he had apertures. It was a light-proof box with film in it. The film moved in. It was basically taking a lot of still pictures in rapid succession. And I went, okay, I get this. And I was going, how the hell do you control your exposure if all you've got is aperture? Quickly learned about neutral density. Shutter angle was very specific, and I wanted to stay out of that department. Crammed for my finals, so to speak. Showed up on the shoot, a crew, and I hadn't had a crew in a long time. I basically did everything myself. If I needed hand talent, I got a manicure and picked up the bottle and did the pour shot. If I needed a set, I built the set. But here I had a crew. I'm confronting the camera for the first time. I go to touch it. I get scolded by the grip and the camera assistant. I'm baffled by the dolly. Director is over schmoozing the clients, and I get a look at the storyboard. And first scene, we were shooting it in sequence. The first scene was 5 seconds. Director blocks out the talent. I climb on the dolly. find the viewfinder, and now I'm looking for the roll switch. The camera assistant now becomes aware that I'm clueless, and he gently takes my hand and puts it on the switch so I can roll.
Wow! And what a hero!
No, wait, yeah, and he director calls, okay, roll camera, and I throw the switch, and I'd seen that the scene was 5 seconds long. I rolled for 5 seconds and turned it off. The camera assistant goes, "I'll do that part. You just relax. I'll take care of that part. You just make sure it's composed right." And we got through it. There were a few moments with the dolly grip when I said, "Could we scooch it in closer?" And he goes, "Do you mean dolly in?" And I said, "Well, sure, let's dolly in." And I go, "Could we kind of scooch it sideways?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's crab right." And I go, "You know where I come from? It's called scooch it right," without the epithet that might follow it. But I made it quite clear that we were going to use my terminology because I was so expert at this. But got through it, and actually the piece got to the finals for the Clios.
Wow.
I had a visual style that was kind of like the British Invasion guys, the Miami Vice look, a lot of real punchy colors, early 80s, the Scott brothers, all of that kind of look. I was accidentally doing something similar. I shot in Phoenix for 6 months doing projects with this guy. That very original piece got to the Clio finals. I was up against the biggest special effect house in the world. I think they kicked my ass, but they noticed me and they offered me a gig, and that's
Amazing.
how I got to Hollywood. It was pretty interesting.
Fake it till you make it works. Paid off.
Yeah,
literally. Yeah.
It could have been tragic, but
yeah.
And I did drag that camera assistant around the world.
I was going to say, I hope you watched after that one. Yeah. Geez.
Oh yeah, I took care of him. Yeah, we went anywhere that was beautiful and populated with lovely lasses. So yeah, he got paid back.
And looking at, obviously then that sort of snowballed for you, and obviously you went into that career and went to Hollywood as a director and cameraman. But looking at your history, your accolades. I mean, you've directed, is it over 750 national and international TV commercials?
Yes, I've done all the beers, all the cars, all the fast food, all the banks, all the airlines. Pretty extensive client list. I've got alphabetically. I've got everything but. Let's see, everything but. No, I got Q. I've got most of the letters of the alphabet. I've got a really long Fortune 500 list of clients. It was fortuitous. I ended up at this big special effects house, and honestly, they brought me in as a director, not a cameraman. Okay. They said, let's just not go there right now. You direct. And they put me with the greatest guys on earth. The place had a reputation of being the place for special effects. All of the folks at Rhythm and Hughes and we teamed up. They had teamed up with Digital Domain, I think it was, or Digital Productions, and they had created Tron before I got there. They had done Star Trek movie. They needed a live action director to take advantage of all the special effects people they had in house. And so it was just like, here's a job, and stupidly high budgets. Yeah. We didn't look at anything that was under 500,000, and many budgets were in the millions. So I went from working in a converted 2-car garage, building my own sets, to having the best crews, the best cameramen, the best jobs. And it was ridiculous. It was really amazing.
It sounds like you joined the industry at the very right time in the very right place. I'm the luckiest human on the planet, both good luck and bad luck. It just depends on the day of the week. But and now in your career, what a vast amount of years in your career as well. How many years is it now, Bruce? Did you say?
Shut up. So picked up the camera in when I was 18 in 1969. I was shooting professionally. By the time I was 20, I'm 68 now. So
wow,
inducted into the Directors Guild in 84. And just been kind of going nonstop.
And on top of that, on the stills world, you're also a Canon Explorer of Light, aren't you?
Yeah, that was interesting. I had a bit of a medical thing back in '99. I was temporarily paralyzed from the waist down due to some race car crashing, and that forced me to give up my production company. I couldn't say yes to everything because I literally was confined to a chair for a while. Learned Photoshop, learned Corel Painter, figuring I'm going to need something to do.
Corel Painter?
Corel Painter. I was one of the first Corel Painter masters, and that got the attention of a guy named Dave Metz, who was the top guy at Canon USA. He started the Canon Print Masters with myself and Eddie Tapp. And then once I was in the door, they decided I should be an AOL. So I've been with Canon since 2003, I think. Yeah. And best part about that is that they often tap me on the shoulder to do product beta testing and launches. So that little weasel, and I hope he's listening, Vincent LaFerre, snuck in and got famously snagged the 5D Mark II and went out and became insta-famous off of it. And a week later, they hired me. I like to rub it in and point that out to him. They hired me to go shoot some stuff with it. He had to argue with them for years, I think. But then I got the C300 when it had it for 2 days, had to produce some content on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day for the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas on the beginning of January. And then I've launched the Mark IV, recently worked on the EOS R. So I'm kind of the old guy that they trust to go out there, and nobody's going to be looking at me and trying to see if I've got something secret in my hands, because it just doesn't look plausible.
And like you say, you're taking advantage and still keeping up to date with modern tech, and you're on the ESR, the mirrorless system. Are you using that heavily now? I
am. We're late to the game on the mirrorless thing, but I think it, just as it seems almost imperceptible when the giant battleship is turning its guns toward you, that doesn't mean it's not happening. The EOS R came in as the court of the internet has famously chanted as a non-professional model. I've been using it professionally quite successfully because the dual card slots didn't break my heart. I never had dual rolls of film in my camera, so it meant nothing to me.
Well played.
But I'm excited about what will be coming down the road. I do like the mirrorless format. Having worked a lot with electronic viewfinders with video cameras, HD cameras, it's a great help. I love the being able to shoot off of the rear LCD instead of having to shoot everything through the viewfinder. Gives you a lot of opportunities for composition when you're working quickly out in the field. I like where the technology is going. I don't miss film at all. The whole thing of, but it didn't film on motion. Thank God, I enjoyed shooting color neg, beautiful Kodak color neg for motion capture. And it had incredible latitude, particularly on the overexposure side. But look at Game of Thrones or any of these other productions that are being done digitally and tell me that you could do that better with film. I think not. I think not. So, I love where it's going, and hope to stick around longer and see what happens next.
So what kit are you using now then? What is your
go-to
weapon?
So I live in the hinterlands. We have no rental houses where I am. So I have, let's see, how do I phrase this? Everything. There's no running down the street to rent something or getting it shipped to me when there's a job I have to shoot it. So I have 1DX Mark IIs. I have the 5DSR. I have Mark IVs. I have what I call sacrificial cameras, which would be the 80Ds, stuff like that a horse could trample it, a car could run over it. Big deal. Just go grab another one. Almost disposable. They're so inexpensive. Playing a bit with the little M series cameras, doing some mentoring, and I'm working with kids, and the little M series mirrorless with the APS-C sensors are nice. But the EOS R more than anything right now. Okay. And had the EOS R RP recently, which was also quite nice. The only shortcoming is the small battery. Yeah. In focus groups internally, I browbeat the engineers about maintaining battery continuity. Companies like Sony that always have a fatal flaw of some kind, and it's usually the battery or the recording medium or something like that. Canon, I've probably got 36 of those LPE6 batteries, so yeah, I would strangle someone if they changed the battery every time they changed the body. Yeah, but and then
so you're just on set with a bandolier of batteries, then?
Yeah.
It's like an ammo supply.
Yeah, exactly.
And I never need them because I'm a frugal shooter. Oh, it was interesting when I got the C300. It came to me with no instruction book and one battery, and I had to shoot show quality content in 2 days. So I was turning that son of a gun off every time I wasn't rolling. I almost didn't use the roll switch. I just turned the camera off because one battery to shoot for 2 nights, and got to charge it in between. But I was sweating bullets over that. So
yeah, I bet.
You're lucky it wasn't a Sony FS system with no instruction manual. You'd have been screwed trying to get through those menus.
Don't I know it? Don't I know? I pick up the other cameras every now and then, even though my fingers burn when I do, and check them out just to see if they're doing anything right. And there's a lot of great stuff out there, but I'm still happy to be a Canon guy. Yeah, just great.
Yeah. Like you say, if you're happy with your system, if it ain't broke, then there's no need to try and fix it. Yeah. So, that's. I mean, you still shoot such a wide variety of work and subject matter, don't you? I mean, you cover fashion, editorial, advertising, motorsports, nature, underwater, adventure, documentary. I mean, that's a whole host of stuff.
Yeah, I learned a valuable trick when I was doing TV commercials. I had sales reps in. I had a sales rep in London. I had one in New York. I had Detroit, LA, Chicago. And one of the things that was the kiss of death was to be a general practitioner. If you're a general practitioner, you're not a specialist. Who wants their general practitioner doctor to do their brain surgery? Nobody. You want a highly skilled specialist. So because I like to do everything, because it keeps me energetic, I look at it like cross-training. I ended up creating totally unique demo reels. So I'd have an automotive demo reel, a humor demo reel, a lifestyle demo reel. And there were times when I actually had separate reps so that somebody wouldn't look at it and go, wait a minute, I want somebody who does cars exclusively. Why am I looking at this guy's fast food reel? That worked brilliantly because when one of my areas of interest was on the downturn, another one would be on the upturn. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of I did a lot of computer graphics integration with live action. That was a specialty for me. I worked with kids, worked with animals, worked underwater, like you say. And all of those are pretty specific kind of genres. And I just had to hide the fact that I like to do them all, and these days I'm more out of the closet on it. I just go to whatever comes in the door. If it sounds like a fun gig, I'll say yes. And the adventure thing has been something that came up in the last I guess, when was that? Probably 2010, I got introduced to the adventure community, and that has blown up into a whole thing. I'm might be getting close to being as much of an influencer in that industry as I am in the photography industry. Joined a group of adventurers. Well, after proving that I wouldn't die the first time we went out in nature, became kind of the old guy in the group and ended up traveling around the world by four-wheel drive.
By four-wheel drive, yeah.
Documentary and.
Where did that passion start? Because you mentioned you were a mechanic in college, and then you said a few years after that you had a motorsports accident or something like that. So, and then again, you do four-wheel drive now. Like, where is that passion coming from?
Well, I grew up in Indianapolis. There's a little race there.
I heard that, yeah.
And then F1 comes through every now and then. I remember shooting Niki Lauda after his big fire at the Nürburgring. Always interested in motorsports, always interested in nature. I was a rock climber as a kid. Got into scuba diving as soon as I figured out I could. And I've always just kind of pursued those things sort of as enthusiastically as I could, and included a camera in it. And that, in turn leads to opportunities. But motorsports, I ended up doing a little precision driving, a little stunt driving on my own projects. Raced in a stuntmen's racing division out in Southern California in when would that have been? Late 80s. Missed winning the stuntmen's championship by 1 point. Damn it.
Oh, really?
Was on the U.S. We race a circle track car. There's sprint cars. There's probably nothing quite like it over there. These big 600 horsepower, 700, 800 horsepower cars that have one gear, circle track, go fast, turn left, dirt track racing. The highest end of it, it used to be that you'd go midgets, sprint cars, Indy cars was the ladder that you would climb up through motorsports. Always wanted to do it as a kid. My grandmother lived in a small town where there was a pretty famous little dirt track. Spent my summers there. When I got enough dough, I started racing. I ended up racing in 6 or 7 different divisions, had a full race shop that maintained a number of cars, wasted a small fortune on it, I should admit, and ended up on the U.S. team. And 94, 95, we went down to a race against New Zealand and Australia in New Zealand. That was a racing series. It goes back to the 1930s. Had a violent crash down there. Ouch. Led later to a retina detachment. Broke my back doing it. Invested too many body parts in racing over the years. But
so what? You just go back a peg, I know. So you ended up having a really bad accident. You had a detached retina in your eye, and you also broke your back as well.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And this was the same accident or more than one accident?
I'm not that old, Wayne. I'm just high mileage. No, I broke my back racing motorcycles in the desert. When I flipped in New Zealand, in the cartoons, when you get hit in the head and you see stars. That kind of thing. Well, when you actually do see stars, those are retina tears. And I flipped up over a fence down there. And on the last lap, when I was passing the leader, mind you,
Did you just decide to turn right, not left?
Well, no, I was passing him on the outside on the straightaway, and he pinched me up to the wall, and I climbed up his back wheel. Open wheel racing can launch cars. But vision went dark for a few moments, but car got fixed, went back out, raced for another month. I think I ended up 4th in the championship, missing a couple of races. By 99, I was having some vision issues, had some chirurgenic work to try to fix some tears. But when I was on the round the world trip in 2011, we were driving through Lithuania, and I started seeing bad light flashes. And within a couple of days, I was totally dark in my left eye. Went black. Retina fell off, and as I was just leaving south of France, heading toward Amsterdam, sampled wonderful socialized medicine in Amsterdam, and they
Socialized medicine.
Yeah, that's a big thing over here we're talking about in our lovely medical system.
Oh, you do have one then?
Yeah. Well, no, not really. And by the way, keep Trump. So we were got a little bit of work there. Took about 1.5 years to restore the vision in my left eye. It's back. It's good. A couple of years later, the right eye did the same thing. So I'm kind of legally blind in my right eye, which was always my viewfinder eye, my dominant eye. Had to retrain myself to my left eye, and that's why I really like the electronic viewfinders now.
Yeah.
And then broke my back, walked it off. I didn't know I broke it. I just assumed it was another crash. And I introduced airbags and anti-lock brakes in automotive space, which meant crashing a lot of cars. And I did do a lot of the driving, but.
So before test dummies were
racing period, are you shooting during that time?
Yeah. So I still do a bit of automotive, and I've done high-speed camera car work where I'm driving the camera car, driving the picture car. I am happy to say I've stunt doubled Ronald McDonald. I don't know if you have. Over there. But there was a Ronald McDonald's commercial where he was racing a NASCAR stock car, and I got to stunt double him. So I was doing 175 miles an hour at Atlanta Motor Speedway wearing that ridiculous suit and those stupid shoes. But I look good.
I didn't want to mention that I thought I recognized you, but I thought that'd been a bit inappropriate. But I can see it now.
Yeah, Ken. That's the profile.
The red
nose. The red nose.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's mental.
Yeah. So we were driving across Namibia on the round the world trip. We were crossing the dunes from Sossusvlei to the Skeleton Coast, and my back was really starting to get to me. I was getting a lot of numbness in my legs, and what had happened was that I'd shattered 3 vertebrae earlier, and all the off-roading had rattled them loose. So when I got back to the States, I went in, and now I have, I think, 10 inches of titanium rods and a bunch of drywall screws in my L4, L5, and S1.
Yes.
So my back is fused from that. It'd been a tough career. Had my appendix removed in the outback of Australia on that same project.
Was that voluntarily, or does local Aborigines wanted to?
It was actually an Aboriginal clinic up on the northwest coast of Australia. Normally it takes 21 days to cross the Canning stock route. We were racing through their 100,000 dunes. It seems like we got through pretty quick. I was feeling worse and worse, and went into this clinic, and they said, you got kidney stones. I go, I don't think so. And I think I got appendix going. And they go, don't you hate it when you're right? And and then I spent a couple of months dying of sepsis, but pulled through.
So did they just throw you on the table next to the wallaby then, did they? Or?
Yeah. They used the Swiss Army knife. and bless his heart, the guy tried his best, but he burst it in the process.
God. Oh, really?
Burst it.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
No, so I'm no kidding. I was laid up there until I could get well enough to limp onto a Qantas flight back to LA, and then went back into the hospital here. But
wow,
other than that, I feel great.
Yeah. As you say, good luck and bad luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a minor blip in your journey then, Bruce. Nothing major to interrupt it too much. Just Band-Aid. Get a Band-Aid on it. You'll be fine.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Stop your snivel.
Yeah, indeed. So, and as well as your sort of photographic and motion picture career, you've designed a couple of products as well, photographic products, and for motion picture as well, haven't you? So
yeah,
I mean, I've seen a bit where, I mean, are we right in saying you at one time in past, you designed your own asymmetrical strip box which was promoted for Westcott, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then it looked like Photo pretty much knocked it off completely.
I can't believe it.
Unbelievable.
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 I would never have thought.
And actually, I designed a strobe that was a self-contained interchangeable battery strobe that I called the Answer, that I couldn't get Westcott to step up to produce. And then all of these Godocs and everything that you're seeing now in the Photo, the bronze color, those are all pretty much what I had designed. But, I think mine had some better features on it. But I did, after doing some lighting products for Westcott, about the time when the Mark II came out, when the 5D Mark II came out, suddenly we had a still camera that awkwardly shot video.
Yeah.
Remember, we didn't have dual pixel autofocus.
Minutes.
Yeah. we had a glacial contrast-based autofocus. No way to control the aperture until the first firmware update. I started designing products for that. I made a company called IDC, Photo Video, and I made follow focus. I made adapters. I ended up designing, I think it was 300 individual SKU numbers products, and we were a certified vendor for Canon, Nikon, Sony, and Panasonic. And that was just going great until they caught up with the technology and started putting features in the camera that essentially antiquated my technology.
Yeah.
I ran that for about 5 years in there, and it was growing every month.
Yeah.
Great. It got to the point where I invested a lot of money in it, and then the bottom fell out. So,
but I saw a little video with one of your little follow focus units. A very short one on its sort of a quick flash over its design process and machining process, and then physically it looked really nice, man. Looked really nice.
Yeah, we won a couple of design awards for it and product of the year kind of things, and it was really going well. There's probably more videos related to that floating around out there than anything else I've done. But we, moved on. Glad to not have that little business anymore.
Yeah.
Glad to just be back in being a artistic image producer.
That's cool. And jumping back a subject to obviously your director's career, am I right in saying, because obviously I've done as much as I know about you from when we were in Milan and things, but I've had to do a bit of digging on your history and things, and I see in some of your write-ups that you're aerial director of photography on the film The Sixth Day. Is that correct?
Yeah,
with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. That
Tell
was
us about that.
So my first assistant director of many years ended up when I closed down my Bruce Dorn Films. I had this great producer, Joyce Cox, who went on to be the visual effects producer for Avatar, Jungle Book, The Dark Knight, Men in Black. She's Academy Award winner. And then Lee Berger, my assistant director, went on to be, I think, executive producer at Rhythm and Hughes, and they did Life of Pi, Narnia, Daredevil, a million movies. Lee called me one day because he knows I'm not very smart. They had been looking for somebody to do the stunt sequences in this Schwarzenegger movie, and they couldn't find anybody to do it. And I always say yes. So it involved flying a helicopter through a slot canyon up in the Yukon Territory. The river is the Stikine River, and it's the Grand Canyon of the Stikine. It was the last unnavigated whitewater in North America. And in the movie, Arnold is a hotshot helicopter pilot. It's in the near future. He flies this swept wing helicopter that turns into a fighter plane kind of a thing to fly snowboarders into the backcountry. So there's about a 2.5 minute sequence in there that involved, well, they could have done it with Maya and created all the 3D elements and stuck the CGI helicopter in there, but it was going to save them
expensive.
I was going to save them $12 versus risking our lives. So we went up there and mounted like VistaVision cameras all over this Twin Star, and we flew through that slot canyon like 8 hours a day for 2 weeks, getting every possible angle for background plates.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and it was so narrow that the rotor disc of the helicopter was wider than the canyon. So the chopper pilot would have to kind of flip it up on its side to fit through the narrow bits and then straighten it back out. He threw up generally a couple of times a day, which was not reassuring. And the production had no plan. If we didn't come back by the time we would have been out of fuel, they were just going to go back to Hollywood because there was zero plan. Really? But lived through that. It was very interesting. You can.
So you were in the helicopter filming and shooting then? Yeah.
Wow.
And a lot of hours. I've used up all my helicopter karma. I've shot a lot of hours in helicopters. Almost got dumped out of the helicopter on the round the world trip in the outback. We didn't have a proper rig. I had like a camera strap tied through my belt onto one of the seat bases. The helicopter pilot got it excited and kind of banked too hard, and I kind of flipped out of the door. But then he realized I had flipped out, and he dumped me back in. So, but at this point, I kind of stay out of helicopters because I think my number is definitely up. But that one project led to another phone call. After I did the flying sequences for the 6th day, word got out that I was dumb, and I got a call from a production company that was doing a pilot for an HBO show that was going to star Jeff Goldblum. Honestly, I don't remember if it ever got produced, but they wanted somebody to go into Baghdad prior to Desert Storm, taking 24 35 millimeter cinema cameras, work with locals, sit them on all the rooftops around Baghdad, and be ready to roll when the Allied coalition attacked. So they would have the opening sequence.
Can't imagine anything would go wrong with that.
No,
safer than a camera strap harness. Yeah.
Just sign here, please.
Yeah. And they described the whole thing. I go, so you want me to be there when they're bombing? Yep. With a whole bunch of cameras operated by locals? Yep. And you want me to get it out of there really fast so none of the footage gets damaged? Yep. And I turned to my wife and I described it, hoping that she would say, "Oh no, honey, you can't do that." She goes, "What does it pay?"
Yes, there you go.
Did you get insurance? Yeah. Did your wife ask you if you had insurance with that? Is that life insurance for that gig?
Yeah, she's constantly buying insurance for me. On me. I shouldn't say for me, on me.
Yeah.
But I told her they were paying $12. She said, no.
It's going to cost me more than that to top up your life, to boost your life insurance.
Do you know if that gig ever went ahead?
I don't.
No.
I don't. But you think about how much the opening sequence is for so many of these series. That's there's a lot of dough and production value put into those things. Yeah. I like the idea. I just didn't like the idea.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason it hasn't been done before, though.
Yeah. And which rooftop are they bombing? That was the real question. My plan was to shoot at the command and control, the buildings and all that. But I just felt like there were going to be a lot. I suppose they do it
all with drones now, wouldn't they? They just film all that with drones.
Yeah. I can understand why you didn't do it. I mean, when I start putting little key elements of that equation together, rooftops, bombings, run like
local
crazy.
Cameraman. Yeah. I use the word cameraman loosely.
That's right. Yeah.
And I look like I'd fit in there, right?
I shouldn't think. I
mean, our listeners can't see Bruce, but I know for a fact you wouldn't have had those glasses that you're wearing right now at that time.
He doesn't look like a native Baghdadian. That's all I'm saying.
Not at all.
Well, crazy stuff.
That is crazy. Stuff. So you said a polite no to that, and then and walked away.
And you say no once, and the inquiries stop, right?
I know that's true.
Isn't that how it is this business?
Yeah.
Some YouTuber probably, or I should say, embryonic YouTuber probably went out and did that.
For $11.
For $11. Brought it in under budget. Oh, gee.
Yeah, what do you think of the industry now, bro? I mean, it's changed a lot. I mean, we all know that. I mean, both Jake and I have over sort of 20 years experience, not quite the gold belt that you've got, but we've seen a lot of changes in our time from the film days to digital. But it's not just the technology that's changed. I mean, the industry's changed massively as well. So, what do you hate about it? Let's dig deep and dirty. What do you hate about it? What's your bugbear?
Well, I hate the fact that I'm not a 20-year-old chick, because I would be killing it now.
That's the title of this show. Anyway, thank you for sorting that.
Because I'd be killing it right now. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
What troubles me is the fact that good business sense seems nowhere to be found. People are so interested in exposure that they forget that now is the time that you have to make a buck. I've always charged for my work. If I ever did any pro bono work, I always submitted a invoice so that the people understood the value of what I was giving them.
Okay. That's a good idea.
I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard a story that someone was at like IBM's shareholders meeting, and they were talking about how they had completely hatcheted away their advertising budget because they were just going to use social media suckers to provide all the content. And it's I would say that if you're entering the world of image making now, and with the main thrust of it not being TV commercials, but being branded media content for social media, you're going to have a hard time making a buck. Having a career is like trying to make a cake from crumbs, because so many people are willing to give it away just to say that they have something published, that they're lowering the bar, and it's harder and harder to.
Well, they're paying to be in magazines now.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Shocking.
What can I say? I mean, you hope that the pendulum will swing back. I mean, you see people going out there, and one or two guys can do an ad campaign off their iPhone and pull it off. But at a certain point, you do want quality storytelling. You do want quality imagery. You do want somebody that will thoughtfully put some creativity into the project, rather than just sort of giddily and gleefully going out there and spraying and praying and hoping they come back with something. But I'm not sure where it will go. I have rebranded myself. Certainly now it's instead of Bruce Dorn Films or IDC Photo Video, which was my manufacturing arm. Now it's BHD Media Group.
Right.
And I will say that I tend to go for the whales. I do nickel and dime work, and I'm happy to do it if it's a creative process. But I prefer to get a big account with bigger budgets. And the budgets aren't like they were in the past, but there are still some good budgets out there. And the way I get them when I get them is by generating the entire creative content. I write. I pitch concepts. I like to less and less going to ad agencies, more and more client direct.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, a huge amount of direct compared to agency now.
Yeah, I for a couple of years I was doing Continental Tire, a German tire company here in the States, and they had shopped their account to a number of big ad agencies, and I was able to be really competitive with the big ad agencies and give them like the equivalent of 4 times the amount of finished content compared to a big shop like BBD&O or Leo Burnett or someplace like that. Because my trick, if I have one, is you got to tell me the budget.
Yeah.
Tell me the budget. Tell me your marketing goal, and let me go away and work on it. And I'll try to come back with a concept that works within those parameters. We got this much money, we got this story to tell, and we want this much media volume, media content. So if you have that kind of control, you can really still do some pretty wonderful things. You design an approach that takes advantage of the stuff that you can get more economically and make it look great. And that kind of thing still works. But I would say that these days I'm getting the work less off of my ability to jam it through the lens and onto a sensor, and more from selling them on a good advertising idea, a good marketing idea, and then executing it.
So what would be your advice then to people coming into the industry now? And I know we joked about, certain aspects, and, you even joked, you said back in the day, you sort of faked it till until you made it a little bit on set with, assistant and that sort of thing. And, and like now we call that hustling, and it's all very popular to do that. And maybe that is just part and parcel of the process of us all growing. But do you have any advice for people coming into it today, do you think?
Yeah, and that particular event was me just being backed into a corner and sort of having to fake my way out of it. But I would suggest trying to team up with small brands. There's a lot of little over here. There are a lot of microbreweries. There are a lot of little micro distilleries. So you might have a vodka brand that's being produced near you, or you might have a clothing designer that is near you, and try to partner up, trade a certain amount of your profit for control.
Okay.
If you have control, you can create a great demo reel. If you don't, if somebody comes to you and go, we got no money and we want to do this, and it's a bad idea, you're going to have a crappy demo piece, and you won't make any dough. But if somebody comes to me and goes, okay, I've got a new line of action wear, and it's got this particular hook, well, then that sets my gears to spinning. And what I then try to do is try to figure out a way to help them elevate their brand. Mm-hmm. I've had occasions where people have offered me stock in exchange for helping to develop their marketing plan. And
okay.
And it takes a little, we're creatives. We have to be creative in the approach. Small startups are where there's likely to be more open doors. If you are legitimately creative, you should be able to sell that person, number one, before you try to go out and sell their products to the general public or their targeted market. Working hard to be able to make sure that you actually can go from concept to final delivery is I think, your best career strategy. If it comes back to a point where something resembling an ad agency controls all access to the clients, then that'll be the avenue you have to go through. But right now, everybody's looking for a way to get the maximum bang for the buck, be a provider of maximum bang for the buck. And then you'll get to the places that have more bucks.
Good analogy. Yeah, certainly. Good advice there, because, I know, especially a lot of university leavers, fresh off the pallet, so to speak, they've been, I feel in a way, a little bit brainwashed in the classroom about all the top magazines and the top shelf and top publications and top brands, and they go out there and they think they can just walk out of one door and into another, and job's a good one, But we know that that's not like that at all.
So work for local brands, smaller companies, and then if they don't have a budget or a very limited budget, then you want to be trying to maintain creative control over that. So at least you have a stellar portfolio piece at the end of it, and then give them an invoice for the full amount, and then discount the full amount as well, so that they're aware how much you charge if they come back to you or somebody else comes back to you in the future. Yeah.
And I'll tell I'll share another little anecdote. I currently live in a small mountain community of about 60,000 people. It's Prescott, Arizona. It's where Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp and all the cowboys used to run their card games before they went down to Tombstone to shoot each other. And so it's a classic Western town, but it's got a little bit of industry, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. When I moved up here, and my wife and I did so specifically to get away from LA and all that represents. I walked into the city offices and found a PR director, and I said, my name's Bruce Dorn, just relocated here. I'm a director cameraman. I want to be the official cinematographer of the city of Prescott, Arizona. And they go, oh, that's awesome. What's a cinematographer? And I said, well, I shoot moving pictures. And they go, we don't have any money for that. And I go, and I will do it for nothing. But I own the footage. I will allow you to use it for promoting the city and its interests. You may not sublicense it to anyone. And if anyone admires my footage, you're to give them this contact information. And I want on a piece of stationery for the city, I want, this is Bruce. He's the official cinematographer of Prescott. Leave him alone. He's on the job. And sign that and give it to me. They did. And I ended up just shooting whatever. And now if I need to go shoot something, I've got carte blanche. I've not set the town on fire. I've come close a couple of times doing things. Disrupted traffic on more than one occasion. Required the police and fire to be called out, like I mentioned. But with that, I met everybody in town who was of any consequence. They actually got a tremendous amount of viewership over some of the stuff that we put out there. And then, the guy that manufactures computer disks knows who I am. The guys that run the helicopter medevac services know who I am.
Okay.
Those kinds of things.
That's a good way of doing it.
In your small area, you want to become the big fish in your small pond and then progressively find bigger ponds.
That's a really nice anecdote, because a lot of people are trying to throw that big hook in that big pond, aren't they? And it just, they fall flat on their face. It doesn't work.
It's a bit, competitions are good. My initial start managing to get to New York, was due to winning a competition. You got to look hard at competitions these days, because a lot of times it's just a way to get ownership of your work. Everybody who enters such and such a photo competition gives up the reproduction.
Yeah, I was gonna follow up on that and say that please be careful. There is a lot of dodgy competitions out there at the moment that are asking $50 or whatever it is to enter an image and that sort of stuff, and then they own the images and they can use it indefinitely. Yeah, so please, competitions are good. They can be, but please just read the small print.
Yeah.
As we know, anything that can be turned into a profitable scam for some scam artist will go that direction.
Yeah, so much easier nowadays. Yeah. So much easier. Yeah, that's amazing. So, I mean, I think, coming to, a bit of a roundup on this episode. I mean, you've given some good advice, some good anecdotes there, which I think are some great lessons if people can take that on board, especially newbies, if you want to call it newbies, into the photographic world, especially, college leavers, university leavers, things like that. It is a bit real out there. But I mean, just this. I mean, we've gone into the depths of what we don't like and a bit of the formal stuff. So, what things do you love about the industry? What keeps your candle burning for being a creative? What things do you love about it most?
Well, working with other creatives. It's been a first class ticket to see the world for me. I've traveled everywhere. On what I call OPM, other people's money. Moving around the world has been spectacular. And I love working with other creatives. Working in Hollywood with a big crew it's like being in a creative special forces unit. Everybody in there is immensely talented and liberal-minded and interested in moving a project forward. I would have paid as much money as I could come up with to have the career that I had in Hollywood. It was just unbelievable working with cameramen like Jordan Cronenweth and gee whiz, Richard Klein and Bill Fraker, all these great cameramen. I learned a lot absorbed a lot just by being in their presence and quietly observing how they worked. I'm trying to give back. That's my thing these days. Is mentorship, and right now I'm working with a 13-year-old Hopi Indian girl from the reservation up here in northern Arizona.
Right, I saw that on your Instagram. Yeah, fascinating journey you've got going there. I met her dad through Automotive stuff. He was showing me pictures that she had taken on her smartphone. They were quite good. She had a really excellent sense of design. He was looking for a used camera or something to get her for Christmas to move her into a proper camera. I had launched the Rebel T2i, is what we called over here, many years ago. I had one in a box I'd never opened. Gave it to him to give to her when she was 11. Been shooting it. She's 13. Recently put an M50 in her hands, and she's got an eye, and she listens. And you can teach yourself everything these days. The thing that you can't get is sort of the wisdom of working with someone else who's been around the blocks a few times. Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
Yeah, 100%.
Interestingly, Outdoor Photographer magazine, which is our biggest title over here in nature and wildlife work, is giving her 6 pages.
Wow!
And
wow, geez, yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, that's cool.
And so we're working.
That's good.
Whenever I get a minute, we go out and spend some time in the field. There's some stuff on my Instagram where she tagged along while I was doing some just some concept work for a young model that I wanted to test. And oh my gosh, she's got it, and she's not been overexposed to all of the nonsense that you can get exposed to via internet wisdom. And again, shockingly, actually looks me in the eye, listens. I tell her some very basic sort of, conceptual kind of things like love the whole frame, look at the whole frame, think about what you're putting in the frame, the whole subtractive art, additive art thing, working on how to interact with talent, all that kind of stuff. She gets it. And so I'm hopeful that I can push that forward into a bigger project.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to kind of make it so that you were embarrassed if you didn't, if you were an advanced pro, you should be embarrassed if you're not mentoring somebody.
Okay.
I think it's something that we owe the next generation. Pass that baton a bit,
Nice.
Pay it forward.
Nice. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, because, and that's kind of what I've been looking at recently myself as well is, we are currently in the process of dealing with a self-taught generation of photographers, thanks to the internet and so on and so forth. And, whereas before we may have gone through higher education and been taught by a previous generation of photographers, or we assist and we're being taught by a previous generation of shooters. And now I think we're seeing many people coming along who have not had that interaction with the previous generation, and I think it's a bit of a shame, really. So I definitely agree with you that there are certain things that you self-taught will only get you so far, really. And I do think that either seek out somebody who can teach you more, or who has an eye or a belief in something else, rather than a 10-minute 01 YouTube video can show you.
Yeah.
But on top of that, you're teaching this young lady, and you're teaching her with limited kit, really, like, only just really a camera and a lens, and really just getting her to, as you say, love the frame, as it were. So has that been interesting for you to get back to basics on just like focusing on just basic kit? Like, what is some of the important kit to you? Like, what is like a piece of kit or gear that you couldn't live without?
Yeah. There can be so much focus on the technology when really it's about the idea. I put her in her hands an M50 with an 18-150. And one of the things we've worked on from the beginning is photography is all about where you stand, both physically and conceptually. You got to have a point of view, but you also have to find a good point of view. So I'm making her climb a tree, lay on the dirt, find interesting angles.
Yeah.
And something that I always advise. I mean, I love zooms. I worked on zooms a lot just for the speed of it in Hollywood rather than swapping around on primes. But I like to advise people, shoot all day at 18 millimeters.
Yeah.
Shoot all day at 135.
Push yourself. Yeah.
Shoot all day at 50.
Yeah.
Move around. Don't just, put the camera to eye level wherever you happen to be standing and zoom until it looks better. Force yourself to understand the psychology of focal length.
Mm-hmm.
Force yourself to understand qualities of light. Teach people about bounce light by walking them through a city. Oh, there's a cube van that's being hit by the sun and the white sides of it is lighting up the faces of the people on the sidewalk beautifully. Why is that? Okay, understand that. Now you're on the path to understanding creating light.
Teaching them to see.
So, yeah. And
so if you could only use one camera and one lens from now on.
Well, I'd want, I love them megapixels. I'd probably, but I'm usually pretty well satisfied at 30-ish, know.
Oh, is that right?
When you get into the higher megapixel cameras, you get smaller pixel sights and you get more limited ISO range is my feeling on it. I tend to be, I started out on a 28, a 50, and a 90 with the Leicas, and a lot of the stuff that I retain that I like best is from the 50. But I see in focal lengths at this point in my life, and I love to do landscapes with extreme telephoto. So I like to use wides in a way that is interesting, but not sort of a sledgehammer of wacky perspective. Mm-hmm. I've made more money off of a 70 to 200 than any other lens, to be perfectly honest. I could probably go out with a 24 to 105. If I was it's always qualified. I don't know if I could just say just one.
Yeah, no, it is tough. Yeah.
I feel like a master mechanic. I want to have all the tools in my toolbox. That doesn't mean I take them all out.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
But I love having the tools. For me, if I had to pick one tool, it would be a brilliant light source, and then put whatever camera in my hand
and shoot with it.
Whatever, and I'll be okay.
Okay, it's interesting. Yeah,
you shoot with a lot of ambient light, though, don't you?
I try to make it look that way.
Mm. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. A certain kind of work that I do really requires that, but I was doing synchro sun back in the days of Hasselblad, leaf shutter 500 CMs and strobes I melted a lot of things with hot lights when I was first.
Well, they were hot. That's the thing. Yeah.
Don't forget your gloves.
and both Wayne and I are involved with the ARRI and the Sky panels, and honestly, those things are just sick.
Yeah,
they're
they're incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
and I would
cheating technically, some would say, but
the Jake says about my GFX.
When I first started working with the big guys, I remember going on set with Jordan Cronenweth. He had just finished Blade Runner, and was in the evenings he was shooting Stop Making Sense for the Talking Heads, and he would always start by lighting with a brute, a carbon arc brute in the back of the set. He'd start with his backlight, start putting reflectors in, and only add additional lights after he had exhausted everything that he could do with a single light source.
Amazing.
That was revealing. Over the course of my career, minimal lights, all the lights, minimal lights.
Okay.
I'm back to working with a fairly light kit. I won't say it's not a sophisticated kit, but a fairly light kit, because I might find myself almost any place. There's a little lighting company that I'm working with now called Light in Motion out of California. They make an LED unit that's about the size of a soda can, a little bit bigger than that. Onboard lithium-ion battery. Plug it in. It's working on mains. It can shoot all day. LED array with interchangeable front element pieces, domes, Fresnels, and so on. Waterproof to 300 feet.
Wow.
Burn about 90 minutes on battery power alone. You can drop it from a couple of feet and it'll bounce. They were in the underwater space. I kind of helped move them into the terrestrial space. It's picking up steam. It's kind of the LED equivalent of the speed light.
Okay.
Sort of revolution that was going on a few years ago. 5600 Kelvin or 3200 Kelvin, dimmable LED, battery powered, waterproof.
Wow.
You can take that thing anywhere. And so there's always a couple of those with me. And,
Nice.
And then when I got room for more kit, it'll be the sky panels.
Sky panels, yeah.
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 Just casually.
Yeah, not the type of kit you clip onto your belt, though, is it? You know,
No, yeah, exactly.
No. But just brilliant, all the stuff you can do with it. And you know what? I take inspiration from tools.
Yeah, right, you say. Yeah.
There's a saying, if all you have is a hammer, the world looks like a bunch of nails. And so that's one of the things that's been refreshing to me over the years is to stumble upon a new piece of kit and see what I can do with it.
Nice.
But,
nice way of looking at it, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brilliant. We could go on forever with a stack more questions, but we'd be here all day. It'll be like a triple episode if we keep that running.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Yeah,
I get it. Yeah. I see how it is. You getting rid of me. That's fine.
Oh no. What we're doing is asking you to save some more of the good stuff for the next one. For next time, we can't exhaust your 50-year career in an hour and a half podcast. That's for sure. So.
Exactly. We still haven't found out why you wear those glasses of that color. We need to find out next time.
It's a long story. It involves Elton John and a falling out that we've had.
Well, he's still got your glasses and he won't give them back.
Yeah.
That guy follows me around doing everything I do. Always has.
Well, Bruce, there's one thing you definitely can't do, and that's grow an amazing beard like you've got right now. That definitely wouldn't look good on Elton John.
Working my way up to the Santa look for next December. So.
Building it up, are you?
Yeah.
That's that. I mean, that's
or cleric. Maybe I should be a cleric. Or something.
Gandalf. I told you, Gandalf.
Gandalf. I'm good.
Gandalf it is. So the next time we interview you, you got to be in costume. Just putting that out there. We might just do it as a live cast and just let people really see what's going on.
Be very.
Fulfill your dream of being a 20-year-old chick. That's it.
Yeah. I can.
And the funny thing is, Jake, I don't think you actually have to twist his arm too much to get him to do that.
No, I could see the cogs turning. He's like, yeah.
No, I perked right up, didn't I?
I could do it.
I can hear those heels clipping on the floor, mate. It's the joy with this below desk shots you can't see.
Yeah. When it's grinding into your flesh, that's still.
I see. I think we need to pull a plug. I think.
Too far.
Is you sure this is the right podcast for that kind of talk?
We'll get another adult rating.
Yeah. Any more questions, Jake, from you?
No, that's been amazing. Yeah, I learned a huge amount.
Yeah. Awesome. It's just a wealth of experience, and Bruce, we hope we can get you back for another sharing of a wealth of experience and knowledge as well for our listeners. I'm sure they're going to find this enthralling and just
once you've worked another 50 years.
Yeah. That's right. Right. But before you go, actually, we do have one more question which we do pitch to all our guests. And this is where we ask you to personally recommend two artists, either from it can be from the photo world or from the video world. They don't have to be cameramen. They can be, stylists, makeup artists, directors, art directors, ACs, whatever you want it to be. To get in touch with them and ask them if they would get in touch with us to come on to Podlemania to record a couple of, record an episode with us. But we ask you to get in touch with them rather than us hound them. And they tell us to go away.
No, I get it. I do your work. You get the credit. I get it. It makes
you're easy.
Great scam. Great scam.
Eh? Well, it just saves us hounding people, and they don't know who we are, and they tell us to politely go away, isn't it, Jake? That's how we like to put it.
Yeah. We call it delegation over here. I'm not sure what you.
So.
Pimping is a
hustling, yeah,
leads to mind.
So,
procuring.
Is there anyone that sort of springs to your mind at the moment you would recommend it? Would think would happily come on? I mean, you don't have to say names now, but even if you've got them in mind, what sort of field they'd be from?
I have some in mind, and but I am going to reserve until I chat with them.
Yeah, of course.
See. So you're. Let me ask you a couple of questions. Fine art photographers equally welcome versus commercial.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the joy of our podcast, with it being a photo and video podcast, we're as our episodes go on, and our listeners will be glad to hear this as well. We're not just talking to photographers and videographers or DOPs and DPs. We want to include everybody that makes up our creative industries on both sides of that fence, whether it's a gaffer or a grip or model, makeup artist, director, agent, agencies. We want to cover everybody that's involved and get everybody's story and learning curves, because people might want to enter this industry at different points or even hear about it. So
I'd love to speak to somebody in fine art, though, for sure. That'd be awesome. Yeah,
it'd be awesome.
Yeah, production designers would be really interesting too. That's one of the things I'm doing a lot now with the kids when I work with them, is talking about the notion of making photographs rather than taking photographs, because while you might not be able to drum up the money to make a movie, you can certainly drum up the components to make a scene, and that's kind of what I've been doing with the stuff that's been on Instagram lately. Get inspiration from a prop, get inspiration from a location, get inspiration from a model/muse, and go out and create a moment that feels like a still from a scene in an epic movie. You can do that, and it does show that you've got the capacity to do it. And that's a big part of success, is demonstrating, and often on your own dime, that you are capable of walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Indeed. No, that would be awesome. I mean, anything you can put forward for that would be nice. And you can send that to us afterwards in an email. Of course, we're not committing you while we're recording, for sure. But so our listeners don't miss out. Where can our audience find you, Bruce? You're on the social networks, online. Where can they go to see your work? Because I mean, I look at your website and your Instagram, and I kind of see different pieces of work standing out on both those sites. So where can people find you?
Well, I being the world's worst at self-promotion, my website is highly ignored, but that's brucedorn.com. I don't know the last time I put something fresh on it. I tend to put a lot of blathering, bloviating, and the occasional images on Instagram at dorn.bruce. There's as much nonsense as images there. I have a little collection of images at bruce.dorn. And those are probably the best. If you were to Google my name, you'll see a lot of little this and that kind of projects that I've done. But I would say probably the only place I put an effort in is on Instagram.
Okay.
So that's going to be the best.
So you heard it here, folks. If you want to go and see Bruce's work, probably at his freshest or most current, then Instagram is the place to go at bruce.dorn. Is that correct? Dorn.bruce
will be more current.
Okay.
I forgot I had gotten Bruce.dorn when Instagram started, and I was pissed that somebody had it, and then I realized later it was me. But most of the stuff is on
Dorn.bruce. Strongly worded letter.
Yeah, and that's where my current efforts, and I do little lessons, just here's an image and here's the thought process behind why we produce this image. That's an ongoing thing I'm putting my shoulder to a bit.
Cool.
Dorn.bruce on Instagram.
That's cool. I mean, we'll obviously put all these links in the show notes anyway when it goes online. But no, that's been absolutely brilliant. And I'll just, shall I round off now, Jake? Should we?
Yeah, thank you again, Bruce. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you for your time. Yeah, you're clearly very busy in between crashing and falling out of helicopters and taking pictures and stuff. So I appreciate it.
Yes, and it's time for a nap.
Time for that nap. Okay, well, let's get the round off of the show done then, so you can go and have that nap. So we just want to thank everyone for listening, and obviously thanks to Bruce for joining us in episode 12. And remember, you can check the show notes to go and see Bruce's work and go and check out who the man is that we've been talking to. And remember to stay up to date and be the first to know about new episodes on all creative things from the photography and video world. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast at podlemania.podbean.com. And if you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. And remember, if you're going through Apple Podcasts and those kind of channels, please give us a like and don't forget to comment, because that boosts our rankings. And finally, another big thanks to our guest, Bruce Dorn. Thank you, Bruce, for your time, and we look forward to catching up with you in the next episode for some more entertaining stuff.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you in the next one.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.